Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 20 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. It's just me and Chris today. Chris Feeney, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm sitting here listening to like 20. We've done 20 of these things. I'm smiling and I'm so unbelievable. Like I can't believe it just kind of keeps going, but it's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to yet another topic of interest for our guests listening in. So
I'm actually shocked that it's only 20 with all the other ones I do, which is great. But I'm surprised we haven't already done 20. Don't be surprised you look up, we've done 100, here a year or so from now. But that's the idea, right? Consistency. You and I were just talking before this is we just need to be consistent about getting content out there and valuable content and making sure people know that every week in general, there's going to be something new coming from us. And that's you ever watch a sitcom or some type of hour-long TV show that when there's not a new one each week, you start getting frustrated or you get mad?
yeah, I could say the same for a few shows right now. That if I miss it, I'm going to Amazon to watch it, and then I'm sitting there waiting for like, wait, is that the end of the season? What's going on?
So
So
what are you watching right now?
So I've kind of latched on to CBS has some great shows. SEAL Team, Magnum. We were taking a trip, a long overdue. Couldn't take it last year for obvious reasons. Trip for celebrate my daughter's graduation, and everything, and so we're heading out to the island. And so we've been watching a lot of Magnum PI, Hawaii 5 just to kind of get a sense of that and everything. So excited about that, but you kind of get into that whole storyline, right? And then you're waiting for that new episode. And so, but yeah, I mean, you know, that's kind of what we've been doing. There's a few other shows. There's a time when during the seasons, holiday seasons, we might latch on to some movies or whatever that are on. But right now, those are our binge shows.
So, are you familiar with Aerial America from the Smithsonian Channel?
I have not. I love Smithsonian. I grew up in the DC area. Been there many, many times. So tell me about it.
So, anytime we're going to take a trip somewhere, we watch. They do it state by state, and sometimes they also do cities and other countries too. But if you're going to Hawaii, which I think is what you mentioned a minute ago,
Yeah.
watch the Aerial America on Hawaii, and you will get so much good stuff quickly that it makes it so when you do travel there, you at least have a baseline. Obviously, there's a ton more you can learn about and do, but it just gives you a baseline of the area. And we go to Puerto Rico now. We went to Puerto Rico a couple months ago. We're going over Christmas, and watching I'll watch the Puerto Rico one again between now and then to get fresh in my mind the things that I need to be on the lookout for going, seeing, and doing.
Yeah. In fact, this evening, I'll be sitting down putting together sort of a sightseeing itinerary of places we're going to try to hit
Yeah.
while we're there. So, but yeah, so there's plenty as far as IGEL, and there's always plenty to talk about. Lots going on, and sometimes things happen in the world that are extremely relevant to what we offer. And today's one of those topics.
Well, yeah. So you and I were talking ahead of time. You had a topic picked out, which is a really good one around end user experience and a survey that was done. And we are going to do that, but we're going to push that out 2 weeks. We're going to talk about IGEL and securing the edge. I think I've done several podcasts this week, and the concept of the end-to-end model and security on both ends of the equation and in the middle has come up several times. And you're only as secure as your weakest link. And in most cases these days, and really has been forever, that endpoint and the software running on that endpoint has been the weakest link. So we decided to cover this blog written by Ben Ward on June 9th of this year, 2021, Secure Your Edge. So Chris, you want to kind of help us understand what the intro covers here, and it starts with the word sadly. So we'll go from that. So what do we cover here in the intro of the blog?
Yeah, so it's relevant topic. Obviously, it's interesting, right? If you take the most recent ransomware attack, the one on the Colonial Pipeline, and that wasn't the most recent one. There's actually been more, but it came to light that it was compromised user credentials, right? So in this day and age of multi-factor auth, I mean, ways to kind of prevent that. Sadly, those common things that have been used before many times over, not just that, but just clicks, links, things that could audit, but compromised credentials in this particular case led to that particular ransomware attack, certainly proliferation of it. And so you would think it would be more widely, demanded at this point. I mean, I honestly, I prefer and appreciate, the banking, the Amazon, just using that before I log in. I know it's me. I know it's this machine I've used before, but I'm okay with you sending me a code that I can type in just to make sure, right? I'll take that security. It's not that terrible from a convenience factor, but it's once again, it's on the forefront. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, Chris, I would argue that that's not what we're talking about, right? That the idea of multi-factor and single sign-on, all working together and trust but verify, that's true. But I really think what we're talking about with this ransomware stuff is the fact that the end user has a really powerful tool in their hand that even after they've authenticated appropriately, if it's been somewhere else before, it can now have stuff resonant on it that can then do what it needs to do after the user's already authenticated appropriately. Would you agree that that's really where the ransomware stuff is happening at the edge these days?
Yeah, certainly. And how it gets onto the device certainly can be a variety of factors, but once it's there and you're in.
It's almost like the bad guys are trusting that you're going to get this stuff and it's going to lay there and sleep or rest. And then when you get to where you need to get to after the appropriate authentication, then it's going to jump into action.
Yeah, just start hunting and gathering, if you will. And the sophistication of these things is obviously quite amazing. I mean, I haven't been in that, side of the security business before. Some of the vendors out there have some pretty amazing products, but the information that they can see with the code and what it does, it might sit dormant for a while before whatever. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So
I find something else interesting you just said. You just talked about not necessarily being in the security business, but I know you've been at Imprivata. I know you're working for IGEL now, which is a read-only Linux operating system with multiple layers that can be managed from a central location. I would argue you've always been in the security business. It was just part of the products that you were selling.
Right. Yeah, it was, to add some more color, what I was referring to is some of those deep analytics that can really kind of dive into and see what is actually going on at that virus or ransomware level. But certainly in my career, that security has always been part of that. From the days when I got my CISSP years ago and started doing security assessments, and earliest part of my career, I worked for a defense contractor, and this is really before IT began to, proliferate in terms of, LAN, WAN, expansion, internet access type thing. That began to emerge. And so a lot of my security focus went from the physical world, access control, protecting classified documents that were, in safes and that type of thing, to now what about IT? How do we protect that? And now I got to learn how to secure IT if IT is going to be used for processing classified information. And definitely had to deal with some situations where, the room was closed, the little sign was up, the classified processing was occurring. When I walked in and I saw an unclassified drive in the computer with the classified drive, I was like, oh crap. Yeah. And then I had to go report that. So that wasn't fun. But anyways, it's come a long way. That actually kind of drove me towards being in IT and security from that experience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we were going to talk about user experience. Now we're talking about security. And the truth is, it's our job to make the best user experience while providing the appropriate level of security for the scenario, or maybe even overly secured. I think those two topics really do blend together and actually answers what you just said, that's why I got into IT, is to give users what they need to do their job while understanding that the security element has to be there and justified and articulated and blended in to that user experience that we're trying to provide.
Yeah. And,
So,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was going to jump us in back to the article, but go ahead. You were going to make a point.
I was going to go back to the article too.
So ransomware, right? Ransomware is okay. So you go back to, I don't know, 2001 timeframe. I remember working with one of my networking guys, and we put a Microsoft IIS server unpatched on the internet to test and see how long it would take for somebody to find it and exploit it, doing port scans and things. And that's the old way of doing security. But then firewalls really got firewalls and DMZs and multi-layer DMZs got put into place, and all of a sudden those attacks started to diminish. And the guys got smarter. They realized that, hey, if you just put little traps out here, users will go out, they'll install something. They all have admin rights, more than likely, on their Windows-based boxes. They'll go out, they'll install this stuff, and we can just wait and let that stuff phone home. And that's led to the rise of no longer looking for, trying to inconvenience us and cause problems for us. They figured out a way to use, the security vulnerabilities to make money. You want to talk through what's happened here with the rise of ransomware and the enablement that things like Bitcoin have enabled it, so that there's no money trail anymore. That to me, and it hit me a couple of days ago, that's the real enabler of this, is the ability to actually make money through this untraceable system. Had it not been for that happening over the last 5 years, a lot of this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, well, certainly you think about these different trends in the market that have begun to sort of converge to the point where we are now, where they can leverage these systems like a Bitcoin, but what's really going on here, right? I mean, we know that access to information, whatever it is obviously very valuable, but it used to be, let's just bring the company down or whatever, but now somebody's like, we can make some money off of this, and so how does that happen, right? I mean, it's still, I think you're still dealing with end users. People can get tricked, whatever, and it might be they open that link or that whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of ways things that happen, but the long and short is, let's lock your system, make it such you can't read it without special key to uncover it, and then we'll give that to you after you send some money, usually millions involved, and then you'll be able to do that. But is it really truly clean after that? That's the other piece of this, right? Are you 100% sure that once you get that key to recover it, that it's actually really safe now, or are you yeah, you don't know.
You can't know, and it's to their benefit to just keep milking you over. And so it's not if, it's when, and it's not just when, it's how many times or how long will go on. It's insane. And the idea that the cryptocurrency has enabled them to get paid doing this is just a huge enabler of huge enabler, and a great example of what a world economy is going to look like. There's a lot more bad guys to work with now that are doing what they need to do to survive, make a living, exploit us.
Yeah, and it seems like they're very much targeting. It could be just low-hanging fruit targets that are, oh, that one's just wide open, let's go ahead and get it. But it's very much now focused on, let's take down these key infrastructure things, or and we know hospitals have been targeted quite a bit. Certainly something like with that pipeline that occurred, the impact that happened up and down the East Coast certainly makes you wonder, like, wow, I mean, what about the electric grid? I think I mentioned, if I didn't earlier on one of our podcasts just 2 weeks ago, I'm hitting working, finished up my first meeting in the morning, and all of a sudden I hear this boom, and then the crash, and the power goes out. And I'm like, what happened? And there was no storm or anything. And it was from what I can tell, a Pepsi truck had just done a delivery and turned down the road, and the trailer had hit a power line and caused this thing to come down. And, I'm working from Panera the rest of the day. So things like that just make you realize, like, oh, what would it take to just completely take us out to the point where how could we be productive? So I've never experienced in terms of personal the ransomware, but I did have one of those scenarios where, went to one of those kickoff meetings. Corporate IT said we're going to put some. We're going to
Chris, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
You know for a fact you've never had ransomware on a machine.
I have personally not dealt with ransomware myself. Not that other customers of mine or whatever haven't, but I myself personally, no.
But so what you're really saying is you've never been exploited, but you don't know for a fact that
True.
you've never had code waiting to do it. It just never executed. And the thing that people don't realize is there's millions and millions and millions of machines out there exploited today that haven't been told to wake up and go do something yet.
Yeah, as best I can tell, that's correct. My one experience where I would say it's somewhat like it was, I took my laptop, the corporate IT turned on some new security stuff, whatever, encryption. And then one day my laptop had an update, rebooted, and I think it was the BitLocker key, whatever it was, wasn't working. And I couldn't get back into my system. And I had stuff on there that I had not yet put into the cloud, if you will, in some cases. Ended up losing years of archived emails that I would often search for and just lost them all, probably 5, 6, 7 years worth of stuff. So anyways, yeah.
Okay, so ransomware is on the rise. People know that that's how they're going to make money out of taking the exploits that are available to them out on the global, with the global economy and the global network, also known as the internet. That's how money's going to be made. And you don't, the idea that there used to be geographical proximity and lack of proximity was a safeguard. That is no longer the case, right? Somebody in any part of the world on the global network, aka the internet, can touch me whenever they need to in a matter of milliseconds. That's totally changed the game, and now the ransomware has become like it used to be. You had to go kidnap someone and take them to the ATM machine to get their money. Now you just take control of their computer and then eventually their system that they're on. And now you have access to more nodes and more opportunity to encrypt stuff and more money, like real money. Let's jump into the section that talks about decreasing the presence at the edge and what we're really talking about here in the blog.
Yeah, kind of going back to that last statement there, being so interconnected, attacking a vulnerable, even though their security has certainly tightened up on Windows OSs, there's still plenty of attack surface there, and so these actors are going after that vulnerability, or in many cases that end user susceptibility, to do something, click on something, whatever it might be, to get that endpoint OS.
Chris, before you go there, tell me what the edge is. What is the edge?
The edge would be, that's the first thing the user is going to access to get to their data. So for us, IGEL defines that as the edge operating system. That could be Windows, could be Apple, could be Android. In our case, IGEL Linux OS.
Yeah. Can I, in terms of network though, the edge is anything that's not necessarily in the core of the internet, the primary routing and switching going on. So is your phone on the edge of the internet?
Technically, I would say yes.
Is your PC or Mac on the edge?
Yes.
And I'm making an assumption here, but is your smart refrigerator on the edge?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. Anything that's not at the core of the internet is on the edge. My point in that is there's a heck of a lot of stuff on the edge. And I would even consider XenTegra's data center not the edge, but one of the edges, because it's not at the core of the internet. There's so much edge to protect here. We've got to get really smart going forward.
Yeah. Just last night, our TV, we turned it on. It was like, just got an update. I'll install it after you reboot or turn it off or whatever. So it's smartly going out there and pulling the latest LG update for that.
So that's a great example, right? It's on the edge, and it's behind a firewall of some type at your house, but it's gone out and proactively phoned home. What if it phoned home and got something bad? Now I've got millions of Samsung TVs waiting to attack something.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. I mean, it's it is. I mean, I don't even know the words to think about it. I mean, it's just the fact that, it's not just corporate people that have to deal with this, but home personal stuff, right? I mean, when will we see the, proliferation of the end user at home dealing with ransomware on his home network, right? Not corporate stuff, just, I can't, whatever. So
can you imagine me calling up my 75-year-old mother-in-law and asking her if her Samsung TV is up to date? Is she prepared for some type of outbreak? And what's the latest antivirus definition on her TV?
Yeah, I was thinking about where you're talking about that. I was thinking about my my mother-in-law, and I got her a new laptop at Costco. I think it was sometime late last year, and went just for ease of use, went with a Google Chromebook, and she had some email or something like that, I guess a few months ago, where somebody was saying your machine's been compromised, whatever, and she was on the phone with somebody.
Yeah.
And she called me and she says, "Is this legit?" And I said, no, reboot your machine. You're going to be fine. It's a Chromebook. It's and so she hung up the phone. I said, "Don't give them any information." Yeah. And she rebooted and everything was fine. But I mean, she was literally that close to, but thankfully she reached out and confirmed.
Do you have anybody else in your personal life that runs a Windows-based computer that's connected to the internet?
Yeah, both my kids plus my wife. They all have Windows 10 laptops.
Do they? Let me ask the big question: do they all have administrator rights on those machines?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Let's assume you said yes. So you've got all these devices that were built to get work done. And in most cases, like in my house, everybody gets their admin rights removed. At least they used to anyway. Now I'm just trusting that, I'm going to give you the right to install stuff. And I'm going to trust that the Windows operating system and the antivirus that I have will catch anything bad you try to install. That's insane to think that we give people that much power to do things where they can load anything from any website. We had a session yesterday, podcast on MSIs and MSIXs and all the different ways you get applications installed on Windows. It's extremely powerful, but along with that power comes a lot of opportunity to be exploited.
Yeah, no doubt. I think at least for the last year and a half, my daughter was in high school. I actually had her running off of a Linux OS instead, and just accessing Office and whatever websites that she did. So that's how she worked. And when she got to college, they, got a new laptop and everything like that. But definitely made sure that before she went off to school, that thing at least had all the updates and had security, and was at least somewhat locked down as much as possible. But you never know.
My high school kids all run Macs, and I get a call maybe 3 or 4 times a year where they're trying to do something at school with the local IT guy at the school, and they need the admin password because I locked them all down. It's inconvenient, and there have been a couple of times where it caused challenging situations, but I just can't give them the green light to install whatever they want. Now they're going off to college this year. They'll have their own computers and they'll have their own rights, and I'm going to wish them luck.
It's I thought of it just as we were talking. I have toyed with the idea of giving them that backup option, which is a UD Pocket, just in case, and probably will here as my daughter heads back to school in August, and my son, just say, if something happens, here's your backup, plug it in, and it's already set up. Just log into whatever, and you can get your work done. Yep. Coincidentally, the article kind of moves us in that direction. What do you think? I mean, what a natural transition.
So we've talked about the edge, and one thing to highlight real quick is what enabled what you just said is the fact that your operating system now includes a variant of Chrome called Chromium, or really the engine of Chrome. And I bet in a lot of cases with the online world of SaaS applications and maybe VDI in your case, that becomes a huge enabler. I guess I'll go back to the edge piece real quick and just talk about the fact that, the SaaS applications, the code for that, as well as VDI implementations, those are also on the edge, but they're closer to the core of what we're talking about here. And they're the responsibility of other organizations to have up to date and working, not the end user's responsibility, but it all counts as edge. And there's a lot of trust, and really the term zero trust kicks in at some point, zero trust. But yeah, there is trust involved in making sure those things are up to date and properly running and secured. But that's not your responsibility as an end user. That's on corporate IT or whoever the retailer is that's providing that as a service something.
Yeah, in fact, just last Friday, I was meeting with one of my colleagues, counterpart over in EMEA, and was looking at what he had set up in Azure, and he had leveraged Microsoft's like he's got a window of time where he does all his updates. He fires these VMs up on a Saturday morning, lets Microsoft run through its update code, whatever, and then automatically shuts them down after whatever time. And he's got this whole process and really kind of it's on Microsoft, at that point, once you enable that, to keep these things updated. And it's lowered his time and effort to kind of do this manually, and we were kind of talking through that and the time savings and stuff like that. But he's leveraged that particular capability, which I thought was really nice. So,
well, hey, before we go into IGEL, let's address the thing you mentioned a while ago around the Chrome operating system. That anything other than and I'm not knocking Microsoft, they've got an amazing stack of the operating system for the endpoint, aka Windows 10. And it has been enabled for decades now to do powerful things. But with that power comes all the things that we're talking about here around the ability to exploit that power. There's options, there's Mac, there's Linux, both less attackable and, well, maybe less attacked, because the attack vector is smaller. There's less you can do with it. There's things like the Chrome operating system, which is even less of an attack vector, but still attackable. And then there's IGEL, and IGEL is, like the article says here, purpose built for the edge to be managed with a good user experience, and secure. And that's secure by, I'll call it luck for the moment. And the luck means there's just not that many people trying to exploit a read-only version of Linux that's really only used in the enterprise, because chances are it's not going to be out there just surfing the random internet that often. And also, secure because it's got the read-only layers. It's got the manageability and the ability to update those layers. But this part of the blog really talks about IGEL, in my mind, is the only enterprise worthy, built for all these use cases, secure operating system that has the management piece and the user experience to try to corral this challenge that we have of an ever evolving attack vector that exploits our end users and their ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance as in derogatory. I mean ignorance is in the fact that you almost need to be a full-time IT guy to understand what you can and can't do. And even then you get exploited, because look, we're not perfect. And we go places and do things that, like, there's every once in a while I install some utility for something I'm doing. I'm like, I wonder what's inside this thing, but okay, install anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I'm just looking through this. I mean, really, our mantra is really, you don't need a lot of information down at the endpoint level. There's nothing locally accessible as far as data goes. While we have capability of adding applications, that might be able to store something locally or whatever like that, we're not really in the business of trying to be just like a Windows OS at the edge. We are, pointing you, we're that we've talked about it before. Let's imagine, what you're going to get to is in the amusement park. We're the shuttle that gets you there to the front gate. And then from there, you can kind of go wherever you go. Maybe it's the old legacy stuff that you're still accessing, or the new shiny new thing that just came out with the cloud, whatever. But IGEL is that shuttle to get you there. And that's really it. We're very much focused on, having that low attack vector right out of the gate. And not just that, but we haven't really touched on it, but just the whole boot process. When you are booting up into an OS, we've got this whole chain of trust. It's a great diagram. If you haven't seen it before, it's certainly on our website. It's not part of this article, but we can certainly point you in that direction. But on some of our IGEL devices, the UD3, UD7, for example, with the AMD chipset, doing a security check there before it gets to the boot layers, and ultimately the checking the partitions and making sure that all along the way, ultimately when you get to that VDI DAS session or whatever it is, there's a security check, and if something gets messed up along the way, then it knows like, all right, something's wrong, right? And the other thing too is we haven't really talked too much about it, but when you're updating IGEL, we come out with updates, firmware. We have a really fail-safe update process. Your current version remains there while the new version is getting installed, and then on the reboot is when it executes and takes over. But if something happens in that, and some of those out there listening may have had situations where it reboots, and then on the reboot it's still updating partitions or whatever. IGEL's smart enough to know that it will go back to whatever version was still intact before it executes on the new one. So there's a whole very smart process there for updating the devices and making sure that isn't compromised as part of running the IGEL OS. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned that chain of trust document. I'm going to put it on the list for something to cover, a few weeks out, because that's for some of our users, that's going to be really exciting, and for some of it won't be. However, it's something we probably need to cover so that people have a way to consume that content.
Yeah. Well, I can say this. I'm on an internal security questionnaire. I'm not responding to these, but I see when somebody has customers that are asking these typical security FAQs, kind of part of the whole, we have a common set of frequently asked questions around security. So there's stuff that we can completely share, and there's other stuff that would be under NDA, but we can certainly talk about the non-NDA stuff.
Your public-facing documents, so I'm sure we can cover all
Absolutely. That. Yeah, there's plenty to talk about. So
Chris, let's kind of wrap it up like this. How many viruses are you aware of? Aware of is a key phrase, that have been used against the IGEL operating system? Just give me your answer as succinctly as you can.
Since I've been here in the last 3 years, 0.
In your entire knowledge of IGEL, how many times has a virus outbreak happened?
0.
0. Now, as succinctly as possible, and this is what I want to leave our listeners with, give me 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons why.
Well, starting, I guess, with the number one, from the, number one, like I said, read-only OS, less ports. There's only, when you fire this thing up.
Can I put one in front of that one?
I'm sorry, say it.
Can I put one in front of that one?
Yeah.
It's the same reason your daughter ran Linux in high school. It's Linux. It just, nobody cares to attack it that much. Not that it's not vulnerable, it is. But if you attacked it, what would you get out of it? Okay, you got 5 users. Okay, go exploit that and make $1 billion. Well, you can't. It's Linux. Let's use that for number one.
Certainly. In no particular order. If you look at, the endpoint operating system market, Linux is certainly much less than a Windows or whatever. So just sheer numbers, right? We're not going to get attacked as much because of that reason. But as those numbers are growing, we've already got, certainly in place the ability to thwart a lot of that activity because of how it's been built. Being read-only, not a lot of ports that are open at all on the device. The security of being able to get managed, not being able to get taken over by a rogue UMS server, for example. A few others that come to mind. I mean, just we've removed the ability to install stuff. You can't go out and download some Linux application package because we've taken those pieces away, right? I mean, there's a variety of things. So,
hey, Chris, real quick, and you can, but you need to put it into a custom partition, so you're not going to do it trivially, right?
Yeah, what I'm referring to is let's just take IGEL out of the box, and you fire up a command line, right? Apt update get. all that stuff that you would normally go through at the command level is gone. That doesn't exist. We've removed that capability. The only way you could add third-party type apps would be that custom partition piece. So,
okay. So we got Linux. We've got the fact, I think you may or may not have said this, but it's managed and read-only. We've got the fact that end user can't just randomly install applications. What else?
mentioned just the ports, right? When the device boots up, what ports are open, what capabilities exist to be able to, scan the device and see what's there. So that low attack vector there. Other pieces too, because we're modularized, if you don't need certain things that might be vulnerable for some odd reason, you don't have to install them. Maybe it's the Firefox browser needs to be updated, which we update very frequently. Same with Chromium. But you can remove some of those pieces to even reduce the attack vector even more. So that modular OS capability, those partitions that are part of the IGEL OS itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? That's a ton. That's a ton.
That's just to start off the top of my head. We've got a whole list of things that that will, if we want to, we can dive into that on a future one, sort of the top 10 security things or whatever. I know we've got some stuff out there we kind of referred to earlier, but
I think the simplest way to say it is, and I am a Microsoft fan, but you cannot secure Windows. There's just too much there to secure. And when you close one door, one hole, another hole opens.
Right. Certainly, I think to productive usage, right? I mean, Windows is built for applications to be installed in a lot of cases directly on the OS. To be productive, a lot of those apps these days need to talk to the cloud. So we're arguing that it doesn't necessarily have to be on the endpoint, in today's world. So
here's my best example. I had this conversation with a security person, and I'll tell them, okay, look out the window, look at the car out there, and I'll grab their laptop and pretend to walk out of the room. And the response there is, well, it's encrypted, which a lot of times it's not. But the fact that there is resonant stuff on the endpoint, and I can pick that endpoint, take it away, and then spend 5 years trying to crack into it. Let's just avoid that altogether, and let's make nothing on the endpoint, but let's still make it a consumable solution, and just nothing ever leaves the data center. My favorite example of that is WikiLeaks. Had Edward Snowden only been using a remoting protocol from a secure endpoint, and we turned off file transfer across the protocol, he would have had to taken a screen print of every page of those 10,000 documents that he stole. I can't think of a better example of just, that's not even ransomware. That's just an end user being malicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking too, just other scenarios where not having Windows on the endpoint just, rapidly gives you a capability to deal with something, right? One of the use cases dealing with disasters, natural disasters, local law enforcement, public safety officials, being able to, if they're leveraging the cloud, SaaS, whatever, being able to take laptops that might be in storage until they need them, pull them out, and just boot up to IGEL or the UD Pocket. If it needs an update, whatever, then within literally just a short amount of time, assuming internet coverage, satellite, whatever, you can be in a productive state dealing with really what you've been trained to do, and that's deal with those disaster situations, right? Whether it's a tornado or hurricane or whatever, fire, something. But having a robust, made for the cloud workspace Edge OS certainly will help you. Anyway, so great article. Check it out on our blog site, and we'll definitely talk some more on more security stuff in future episodes.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you joining, and I think we could talk about this topic almost every week. We'll find other things to talk about. I think we may have talked about security a lot lately. But,
yeah.
Getting users to do their job efficiently and being secure and protecting them from themselves. It's kind of like It's kind of like getting into a nightclub or something. You don't want people to stand in line, but at the same time, you don't want so many people in that you create a fire hazard and cause an issue where something really bad could happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
So you make them stand in line outside on the edge. That may have been a stretch, but I thought I'd try it anyway.
Yeah. Unless you're Andy, you get a VIP pass.
Not most of the time, but occasionally. All right, Chris, thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I appreciate you joining us. We'll do it again, I think, next week with Seb, Community Podcast.
Sounds great. Thanks, man.
Thank you.